Rudolf Hess, born in Alexandria, Egypt on April 26, 1894 to a prosperous wholesaler and exporter, moved to Germany at age 14. He enlisted in the German army at the outbreak of World War I to escape his father's control and unwanted career in the family business. Hess was wounded twice, later becoming an airplane pilot. After the war, he joined the Freikorps, a right-wing organization that put down communist uprisings in Germany. At the University of Munich, he studied political science and was influenced by the Thule Society, an anti-Semitic group promoting Nordic supremacy, and Professor Karl Haushofer, whose ideas on expansionism and race formed the concept of Lebensraum. After serving time in prison in 1925, Hess worked as Hitler's personal secretary without holding any official position within the Nazi Party. In 1932, Hitler appointed him chairman of the Central Political Commission of the Nazi Party and SS General as a reward for his loyalty. On April 21, 1933, he was appointed Deputy Führer, a ceremonial role. Hess was known for his shyness, insecurity, and extreme devotion to Hitler. He demonstrated fanatical loyalty and blind obedience to Hitler, and in 1934, he gave a speech in which he stated that the National Socialism of all of us is anchored in uncritical loyalty, in the surrender to the Führer that does not ask for the why in individual cases, in the silent execution of his orders. He was often tasked with introducing Hitler at mass meetings, with bellowing and wide-eyed fanaticism, as seen in the Nazi documentary, Triumph of the Will. Despite being rewarded for his loyalty, Hess was not given any major influence in matters of state due to his lack of understanding of power and inability to take initiative. Despite being granted titles such as Reich Minister without portfolio, member of the Secret Cabinet Council, and member of the Ministerial Council for Reich Defense, as well as being designated Hitler's successor after Göring, Hess's power was gradually undermined by the political scheming of top Nazis around Hitler. He was only interested in serving the Führer, and was unable to engage in personal struggles for power, losing out primarily to his subordinate and eventual successor, Martin Bormann. As a result, Hitler distanced himself from Hess.
Mein Führer, Sie sind Deutschland. Wenn Sie handeln, handelt die Nation. Wenn Sie richten, richtet das Volk.
On the night of May 10, 1941, a Scottish farmer named David McLean discovered a crashed German Messerschmitt airplane in his field and a parachutist who identified himself as Captain Alfred Horn. However, the surprise guest was not an ordinary Luftwaffe pilot, but Rudolf Hess, a longtime loyalist of Hitler. McLean's mother served him a cup of tea by the cottage fireside. Hess's arrival in Scotland on a self-proclaimed peace mission, just weeks before Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, was one of the war's most bizarre incidents. Questions and theories surrounding his actions have persisted for 75 years, ranging from intriguing possibilities of how the war might have ended differently, to bizarre claims that the man was not Hess at all, but a body double. The truth behind what happened remains uncertain, but it is as intriguing as any of the speculation. The Hess flight was a remarkable feat in itself. He took off from an airfield near Munich in a small Messerschmitt fighter bomber alone, at around 6 p.m., flying up the Rhine and across the North Sea, displaying considerable skill in navigating using only charts and maps on a dark foggy night over unfamiliar terrain, while also evading British air defenses. By 10:30 p.m., Hess was over Scotland, out of fuel, and forced to bail out just 12 miles from his destination. His intended destination was Dungavel House, the home of the Duke of Hamilton. Hess hoped to make contact with one of the highly placed British figures who, unlike Churchill, were willing to make peace with the Nazis on Hitler's terms. Hess believed that Hamilton headed a faction of such people and immediately asked his captors to be taken to him. However, Hess was mistaken, as Hamilton, who was not at home that night but on duty commanding in RAF Air Base, was committed to his country in its fight against Germany. The mission of Hess, the unlikely envoy, quickly went awry. When he was granted a meeting with Hamilton the next day, his pleas fell on deaf ears. To make matters worse, Hess denied from the start that Hitler knew anything about his mission, which meant that the British did not afford him any diplomatic respect. He was instead imprisoned, and by the night of June 16, the obvious failure of his mission left Hess so mentally shattered that he attempted suicide by throwing himself down a flight of stairs. Hess spent the war in British custody, confined in various locations including, briefly, the Tower of London and a military hospital, where he was even allowed guarded drives in the countryside. He was frequently visited by intelligence officers seeking secrets and by psychiatrists trying to understand the Nazi mind, particularly in Hess's case, as his mental health showed serious signs of illness. The psychiatric examinations were less about concern for Hess's well-being and more about the hope of gaining valuable insights into how the criminals in charge of Germany, including Hitler, thought. Hess was transferred back to Nuremberg for the post-war trials in October 1945, where he escaped the death penalty but was sentenced to life in prison. He spent the rest of his long life, 46 years, as prisoner number 7 in Spandau, where he remained long after the other Nazis were freed. Hess was the only prisoner at the facility for over 20 years, his sentence ending only when he was found hanging from a lamp cord in a garden building in August 1987. His suicide was denounced as a murder by those, including his own son, who suspected that he had been silenced. However, Hess's death did not put an end to the questions surrounding his actions. Did he really come alone? Was he sent to Scotland, or was he sent for? These questions continue to be debated to this day. The news of Hess's flight was a shock to the Nazi regime in Berlin, and authorities quickly moved to distance themselves from him. The German public was told that Hess had mental disturbances and hallucinations. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist who was well versed in such tactics, feared that the British would use Hess as part of a campaign targeting German morale. He wrote in his private diary on May 14 that the German public was rightly asking how such a fool could be second to the Führer. However, the controversy eventually died down. Despite holding a powerful title, Hess's influence in the Nazi hierarchy had significantly decreased by 1941. Some have speculated that his flight was an attempt to regain Hitler's favor by delivering an agreement with the British. Instead, his departure simply consolidated the power of his ambitious and manipulative former deputy, Martin Bormann. Despite the many theories and speculations surrounding the Hess affair, the truth of what exactly happened remains shrouded in mystery. The release of further classified documents may provide some answers, but it is likely that the true motivations and circumstances behind Hess's flight will forever remain a topic of debate and speculation.